Hi everyone, welcome to episode 101 of the XS Noize Podcast. I'm Mark Millar. Thanks for listening. In this episode, I speak to multi-talented Midwestern artist Lissie about her new Americana-tinged indie folk album, Carving Canyons. If you missed the previous episode, I spoke to music legend Millar.
The most outstanding bit was when I'd finished the record. You know, we had 24 hours to do all the vocals and Phil Collins' drums, which was another outstanding bit. Watching Phil, he did 2 takes, and he only did the second take because he thought he overplayed on the first one, not because he made a mistake. It was just brilliant. Was when we'd finished, because the track had to be finished by 8 o'clock the next morning, the Monday morning, to get to the pressing plants, to be cut and go to the pressing plants and start pressing the vinyl, because that takes a while. So I got in my car to drive back home after staying up all night and finishing this track. As I'm driving home, Bob took a cassette to Radio 1, and I as I'm driving home, the radio's playing. I hear Bob enter the studio, and it was Simon Bates, and he played the cassette, which is unheard of. The BBC don't play cassettes. And then as soon as the cassette finished, they rewound it and they played it for a second time. And at that second, you know, despite the fact that you're groggy and tired and a bit irritable and hungry and, you know, whatever, at that very second, I knew that something phenomenal was happening. It was about to happen. Because that in itself was unheard of. It had never been done before. And then the rest was just like being sucked up in a whirlwind, you know. It was just, you know, hang on for grim death to get through it all.
So check it out. And if you like the podcast, please subscribe and share it with your friends. If you want up-to-date music news, album reviews and interviews, then check out our main website at xsnoize.com. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Search for the tag at XS Noize Music. Here's XS Noize writer Daniel Lynch with a taste of what's been on the website this week.
Irish singer-songwriter David Keenan releases his new album, Crude, in November. XS Noize has premiered the latest single from the album, Back to the Pavement. You can listen to it right now and find links to pre-order the album, which is available digitally through Bandcamp and on a limited vinyl release. We also have new music streaming on the site from Lila Vargan and Rebecca Fitch. Joshua Burnside has released a video for his latest single ahead of an EP release in November and an Ulster Hall gig in December. And Bush and Dropkick Murphys both tease upcoming albums with the release of new singles. In the reviews section, Randall Radich has been listening to the third album from the Beths. Expert in a Dying Field gets an 8 out of 10 score from us. David McElroy gives Suede's new album Auto Fiction 8 out of 10 as well. David says the album is an impressive display of the band's longevity, but also full of surprises. You can read the full reviews at xsnoize.com.
Lissie has released her fantastic new album, Carving Canyons. The 12-song collection is a sonic comfort as it charts the ripples caused by heartbreak and loneliness. In this interview, Lissie talks about writing and recording the album, starting a popcorn company, her upcoming tour, and lots more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the XS Noize Podcast with Lissie. Hi Lissie, welcome to the XS Noize Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
It's great to have you. So I'd like to go back to the start. I always go back to the start with my guests. You know, can you remember the first band or artist that made you pay attention to music?
Oh, shoot. Well, you know, I feel like I have several answers to that question, but my earliest memories of music and performing really was my grandfather was a singer, and he performed and was in musicals and was a barbershop quartet, like international champion. And so I kind of just remember there being, you know, music around via him and like going to church and choir and seeing him in musicals and so forth. But also, you know, definitely like Janet Jackson and Madonna made me want to be a pop star. So I'm an 80s baby when MTV was king. So
yeah, so am I. Absolutely. In my opinion, it's the best decade for music.
Yeah.
When did you decide that you wanted to pursue a career in music?
You know, I think, so I always sort of repeat myself, but I'm the youngest of four. I'm the baby of the family. And, we all had big personalities and everyone was always sort of talking over one another. And I think on some level, being exposed to performing and like seeing my grandpa on stage and then doing musical theater myself as a small child, I think I liked not just the attention, but like this sense that like my voice was being heard and expressing myself. And so from a young age, I had that opportunity through singing, and I always had this big, loud voice, and I was always singing forever since I can remember. So I think like teeny tiny, I loved expressing myself through singing and moving my body, and like how it was like a coping mechanism and a self-soothing thing almost to like feel vibrations in my chest. And I loved the sort of like expression I got from it. So I'd say ever since I was tiny, I always was like, I'm going to be a singer. And I think when I was little, it was more like, I want to be Madonna. And then it sort of shifted as I got older to like, I want to write songs and play an instrument and be in a band and, share my perspective. But I've always wanted to do this.
Over the years, you've released quite a few albums, but you're about to release your new album, Carving Canyons. The album deals with heartbreak and loneliness. Did you go into the recording with the idea that you wanted to write about those themes?
Well, I mean, I think for me as an artist, especially being an independent artist, I don't really like have to create if I don't feel inspired to create. And that's been really great. I'm not on a deadline. No one's expecting anything from me. Obviously I was touring a lot 2018, 19 after Castles came out. And then, the pandemic happened and everything just really shut down. So I was collectively grieving with the world about the shock of this, just surreal experience of all being like in quarantine and COVID, as well as dealing with a breakup and, not being able to like distract myself. I just had to like hang out by myself, like with my dog and garden and hang out at my farm. And like, no one could give me a hug. It was really strange. And I think I was just, for the first 6 months of the pandemic, it was like, I wasn't writing. I didn't have anything to say. I was just sort of like everyone else, really just mid-processing. Like, here in the States with the politics and the police shootings and the, just seeing people who were really struggling with loneliness and anxiety and my breakup and just everything, there was too much going on to write a song. Like I didn't know what to say. I was still deep in just the shock. But what I noticed through that sort of 6 months of just trying to take care of myself and heal from, not only the breakup, but just this collective shock was that I grew a lot. I couldn't run away from my problems. I couldn't avoid feeling my feelings. I couldn't drink it away. I couldn't travel it away. I couldn't laugh it away. I just had to like be and like be uncomfortable and like learn how to be uncomfortable without reaching for something to take that pain away. And so I think through observing my farm and things growing and the inspiration I found in the seasons and in nature, as well as just having this time to hopefully get more self-aware and emotionally intelligent and like real with myself. By November of 2020, I was kind of like, all right, I need to talk about this. And so what I love about Carving Canyons is I made it over the course of a year. So it wasn't like, okay, I have this one big thing. I'm going to write 12 songs and just make a record. It was like, I have 3 songs about being really angry, and I have 3 songs about being really sad. And I have like 3 songs about kind of feeling reflective and accepting. And then I have like 3 songs about being excited about the future again. And like, so it followed this arc of grief. But it took me till November of 2020 to like, the fall of 2021 to write and record this album in like little chunks of this process of that grief and loneliness and sort of how I came out the other side of it and wanting to share that with people because I think it's very, very universal.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get some of the songs in moments, but you also wrote some of the album in Nashville with a lot of collaborators. Do you enjoy collaborating with other songwriters?
I do. I love it. And to be honest, I mean, I've always collaborated and written with other songwriters since the beginning. I feel like I talk about it a little more now, almost just because I think if people have this idea like, oh, I'm independent, it's like I'm independent, but I have so much of a team around me, from songwriters, musicians, producers, engineers, mixers, to my band, to my management, to my PR, to my, lawyer and my bookkeeper, like I have this giant web of support. And so I think also songwriters sometimes don't get the recognition they deserve, nor the streaming royalties that they deserve. And so I thought, especially too, I've really started writing a lot more. There's a lot more awesome women on the scene that I've been fortunate to become friends with and write with. So I've sort of been highlighting the co-writing more, but it's always been the case. I come to a writing session with a point of view, and it's my story and it's true. But I've found if I just try to write by myself, I won't finish a song. I will clean my kitchen. I will do my laundry. I'll clean the garage. I will procrastinate. I can't get a perspective. So I've really come to rely on these sounding boards and these kind of writing sessions. It's like therapy. And so, yeah, I co-wrote almost every song on this record with a bunch of amazing artists and songwriters.
Well, let's talk about some of the songs. Your most recent single from the album is "Sad." I really love that song. It's really, really great. Listening to it, it's something I've definitely felt like. When I listen to the lyrics, it's definitely something I felt like saying to ex-partners. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's part of a big goal of this record and of making music for me at this point in my life is really to give people tools to feel their feelings. And also to validate that anger is an acceptable emotion. And so yeah, it's immature when someone hurts you to be like, I hope you're fucking miserable. Pardon my language. But you might feel that way for a while. And there's no shame in that. I've come out the other side where the person I wrote that song about, we've made peace. I forgive them. I wish them well. But in that moment, it was like you threw me out of the fucking car window like a bag of garbage. Again, pardon my language. I felt like I'd just been tossed aside in such a cruel manner, whether that's true or was my interpretation of the events. In that moment, it was like, you need to feel bad for how bad you made me feel. And I think that's a very human thing to feel that way, but we don't always admit it. So I think it's I use my music to stick up for myself, and nothing's off limits. I'm just being honest. And I wrote that with Maddie Diaz, who's such an incredible artist. And it was everyone sort of has a story like that, of someone who did you wrong. And you're you need to pay. You need to sit in your room and think about what you did, It's not very mature. It's not very evolved. And eventually you move past it, I hope. But, I'm a Scorpio. I've got a little bit of that vengeful energy floating around. So I was like, I hope you feel terrible for making me feel terrible. But yeah, no, then I evolved past it, and I got a little more gracious. But, I need to honor my emotions as they happen.
Absolutely. My favorite song on the album is the upbeat "Chasing the Sun."
Oh,
I really enjoyed that. What can you tell me about writing that song? Where did that come from?
Yeah, well, and obviously that one hasn't come out yet. And people who do have the album haven't really brought that one up. And I love "Chasing the Sun." I almost called the album "Chasing the Sun." So I'm so pleased to hear you love that one. It is. It's a vibe. It's a groove. "Chasing the Sun" was one of those examples. It was kind of a song I just wrote kind of on my own, but then my producer Kurt Schneider and my friend Martin Kraft, who I write with, kind of helped me finish the lyric. But it's really the genesis of it was I live in out in the country. I live up in northeastern Iowa near Minnesota. In the winter it gets dark pretty early. And it gets very cold here, very cold, very dark, snow, dangerously cold in the winter time. And I have a pickup truck, but I also have a car now that I drive for fuel efficiency. But back then I just was always driving my truck, and I'd be going back and forth to visit my family in the wintertime. And I hate driving at night. And so just something as simple as me driving home as the sun was setting through this wintry rural landscape, just county highways. And I'm sort of in that moment being I'm chasing the sun. I'm keeping pace with the sun because I don't want to drive in the dark. I'm sort of speeding. I felt like I was kind of following the setting sun And it gave me this idea for a title called Chasing the Sun, for a song. But then when I started writing Chasing the Sun, it sort of was about, this sort of optimism in the face of hardship. And always sort of, on my last album, I had the song Best Days. I mean, I think I can get dark and I can get emotional and brooding, but I also think hopefully my songs also always have like some hope and some sort of silver lining. And so Chasing the Sun was very much for me about, trying to, I was confused what it was about. Because in one way it was like about, is it good to be chasing the sun? Like, should I be more in the present moment and not always looking ahead? But ultimately then it ended up being about, continuing to see like the goodness on the horizon and having optimism, in these times in the world with having experienced COVID and climate change and global warming and the politics and the wars and like all of these ways that life just feels like extra scary. I've had to reconcile, like, how can I feel on certain days like joyful in my own life when there's so much suffering? Like, what's the cognitive dissonance of like two opposing truths? Like, hey, look at that really pretty flower, but like there's this terrible war going on and millions of people are suffering, So I think I'm always trying to have this like can-do attitude and like, come on guys, like we can do it, So Chasing the Sun is a testament to my, hopefully like ever eternal optimism that I think we can get through this. I think we can do it. Like, I think that, we'll get there. And, I'm going to try and like, not have toxic positivity. The other songs cover the hard stuff, but that one is very much about like, believing that there's still hope for the future.
Out of all the songs you've written for the album, which song was the hardest to write? As in mentally, just to actually get it down?
Well, I mean, without actually going into too much detail, I have two answers. One, Hearts on Fire was a song that my co-writer kind of had brought to me kind of finished, but I don't really like to just sing someone else's song. So then I wanted to like change all the lyrics to kind of fit more with my kind of headspace. But then like I had changed all of his lyrics and he didn't really like the lyrics that I wanted and he wanted his lyrics, and we're great friends. So we got through it, but we had to sort of meet in the middle with where we landed on the lyrics. And I mean, it took, and he's in Sweden, so it took us months of Zoom calls and WhatsApp calls and to finally like see eye to eye on what the lyrics were going to end up being. I mean, it almost didn't make it on the record, but I'd had this dream that Bernie Sanders told me I had to finish it. So I did. And if Bernie Sanders comes to you in a dream and tells you you have to finish a song, you got to finish it. So we did. I was like, I can't give up on this. I have to figure it out. So that I would say Hearts on Fire, but also there's a song on the album called I Hate This. It was easy to write. But it definitely, I mean, even when I talk about it, like, oh, I get a lump in my throat. Like every single time I hear that song or even talk about it, like I feel like I could start crying. So, it's just about that really raw feeling of not being able to talk to the person that you love, that you talk to every single day, who you've been through some crazy shit with. And even though I'm like past that grief, like it's still, I lost a dog in a really, really painful way. And my dogs are like my children, and we kind of had to share that like just tragedy. And, so when I hear I Hate This, like, I mean, I even talking about it, it's like I could start crying. So.
But how do you feel now? Are you in a better place?
Yeah, I am. And I mean, I think that's the thing for anybody. And I think there's so much like stigma around mental health, but also just not being okay. And like shoving things down. And I feel like that's what leads to all this anger we see out in the world is like this, especially with men, it's like not letting people have the right to feel what they feel and have a safe way to express it and get it out. And, I went to some dark places and I've had those times in my life where I felt utterly lost and hopeless and dark and like I couldn't go on and just scared. And, I may very well feel that way again someday. I think that's sort of what Carving Canyons as a whole is. There's peaks and valleys, there's depressions and edges. And, I was not good in 2020. I mean, I hope to have an opportunity to talk about it more, because I really felt like I was not going to be okay. And I was like trying to find help, and I couldn't really find help that didn't feel like punishment. And, but no, now I'm doing really well. So I think because I had to be miserable and uncomfortable and humble, you get so humbled when you get that dark and low, that if you can crawl out of that hole, I've usually found in my life that some of the most clear, joyful times in my life have been immediately after the darkest times, like darkest before the dawn cliche. I'm really proud of this record. You know, I live on a farm. I've learned so much about conservancy and wildlife and trees and plants and gardening and all these things. I have that as an outlet. I started a popcorn company during the pandemic, and I opened a store in Iowa. I'm in a great relationship that's for the last year plus, that's been really, really healthy and really great and supportive. And, knock on wood, because life, there's also challenges and stuff with my family and personal life that's hard. It's hard to get older and see, accept change. And there's always grief that comes with being a human. So I'd say, but yeah, like I'm sober right now. I eat well. I go for walks with my dog. I'm just trying to take care of myself and keep it real. So I'm doing okay now, but I might have a nervous breakdown in like 6 months. I don't know.
Well,
so
I'm glad that you're good now. Really am.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope you're well. Are you doing well?
Yeah, I'm great. Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, good.
I cannot complain. You mentioned the popcorn company, Otts Pops Indie Pop. I love some of the flavors. There's cheesy pop, dream pop, folk pop, and many more. So why a popcorn company?
Yeah, well, so kind of, I'm like, long story short, I'm so long-winded. So I live on a farm, and I don't farm. I garden, but all of my acres in my woodlands, like it's all like conservancy. And so I have probably about 11 tillable acres, as they say, that could be anything. It could be corn, it could be soy, it could be popcorn, it could be sunflowers. I've got like 3 acres of sunflowers right now. I'm getting ready to put it all into prairie. So it'll just exist as like a natural space that I don't touch. But I had at one point thought, oh, it'd be cool to like grow popcorn and like sunflowers and start like a popcorn company and grow my own popcorn and my own sunflower oil, because we air pop it, but we use sunflower oil to make a lot of the flavors. And that would be so much work. It would cost probably like millions of dollars to do that. So, but as I was sort of thinking of this, I was like, oh, I want to start like a pop music themed popcorn company and call it Indie Pop. And every flavor is going to be a type of pop music. And I'd been sort of talking to my British band when I was out there years ago about this concept and kind of joking about it. Like, oh, that's cute. Like indie pop. Well, so a really good friend of mine here in Iowa, she started an international like seed saving kind of initiative where they grow and save heirloom seeds, like rare varieties of plants that, there's like 1,000 kinds of tomatoes, but you only get 6 of them in the store. So there's this movement worldwide to save seeds and preserve them in this seed bank up in the Arctic. And so I met Diane, and we'd become friends, and she'd started Seed Savers, and she had a caramel corn that she called Otts Pops, which is her family name. So during the pandemic, like I couldn't tour, I couldn't do anything. I was like, I need a project. So we decided to start Otts Pops Indie Pop. It's a mouthful and a handful. And so caramel corn became Dream Pop. I make this kind of vegan nutritional yeast one called Folk Pop. We have cheese corns, Cheesy Pop. We have Synth Pop. We made some Nordic Pop recently. We have, Remix Pop when you put the caramel and the cheese together. So we have, and Brit Pop I haven't done it yet. I have to order labels. It's just going to be cheese and onion. Power Pop might even have some protein powder in it. Like we have all of these really silly, fun. It's so fun. We're open to suggestions. But there's so many kinds of pop music. So, and I made Lissie Pop recently, which is a little folky and a little cheesy. And so I mixed the folk and the cheese. But yeah, we just started selling it locally and online. I mean, I make it and she makes it. So we can't make a lot of it at once. It's really time consuming, like handmade, small batch. I wear like a hairnet. I'm like sweeping in the kitchen, like for hours and hours. But we opened a store called Pop Culture, which houses a few different like creative local entrepreneurs, companies, and then we sell our popcorn there. So I don't know what'll happen or how I'll grow it. I'm going to train someone to make the popcorn next week because I'm going on tour. And I'm like, who's going to make the popcorn? So It's been really cool. I'm really like hoping it takes off because I know you all don't eat a lot of popcorn over there like we do in the States. Like popcorn isn't as big of a thing in other parts of the world necessarily, but it would be so cool someday to like franchise and have one in the UK or in Norway or so forth, you know. Popcorn is so good. I'm like, I was trying to get it into this store and this like, Australian guy was managing it and he was like, we don't eat popcorn in Australia. I'm like, I'm sure some people eat popcorn in Australia. So it's not as big of a deal though.
With doing that, writing music and running a farm, is there enough hours in a day for you? You know, how do you fit it all in?
No, there aren't. I'm always stressed out. I'm doing good now. I think partly just because I've been sleeping great. You know, I may drink again, but I've pretty much for the last 20 years have drank like every single day and it's been fine. But now as I'm getting older, it's just so hard to like navigate being hungover. So it's only been a few weeks that I haven't drank, but I'm like sleeping so good and I have so much more energy. So I'm doing a much better job now of enjoying juggling. Whereas before it was like, how am I going to get it all done? I think everyone I know right now is dealing with this like post-COVID busyness. Like before COVID, we were all way too busy and then we got to slow down and then we're sort of trying to relearn like how to be busy again and how is that sustainable? What is the balance? So, you know, because there's a new album and the popcorn and the farm and my partnership and my family and my friends, all the things, I'm too busy, but it's okay. You know, I think I've had this sort of bittersweet thing in the last week or two. Nothing good came of COVID, but I feel this sort of like gratitude for like, wow, like I've learned a lot these past 2 years. My dog has been my rock. I love her so much. She's just sleeping on the couch.
What's her name?
And I've been really Olive. She's 3. She's a big girl. But yeah, you know, just like kind of now being ready to like depart into the world again and being busy. Like I have a lot of like reverence for the past 2 years and it's definitely a little surreal.
Well, I have to ask you about this. I'm a big fan of Snow Patrol and you featured on some of their songs on the album Fallen Empires. So how did that come about working with Gary and the boys?
Yeah, you know, and they are so lovely and Gary is awesome. So I'm trying to remember, like, I think because my first album did pretty well in the UK and I was doing a lot of festivals and I ended up working with, Jackknife Lee, the producer on my second record, Back to Forever. And he works with them a lot and, you know, they're like family. And so through, you know, their bond, and maybe Snow Patrol being slightly aware of me, I was invited to come and sing on Fallen Empires and it couldn't have been more like just easygoing, just fun and, got to sing on the record. And then I can't remember the timeline, but then they had some like really big shows in the UK, like arena big. I'm like, was it Wembley? I can't even remember. I have no memory for anything, but it was like more people than I've ever been in front of. It was terrifying. We did like 3 shows and I got to, sing with them on stage. And, you know, we haven't really stayed in touch necessarily, but it was all good. And, yeah, one of my favorite things was singing, Set Fire to the Third Bar. I think that's what it's called. Yeah.
Yes.
The one that Martha Wainwright had sung with him, getting to sing that with Gary. And we did some shows in the US together too, like on the West Coast, in like 2012, I believe. Yeah, getting to sing that with him and like not knowing him very well, but just embodying that song. And we would just be like dead eye contact, you know, and eye contact kind of makes me feel a little uncomfortable sometimes, like especially sustained eye contact. But there was something about that song and not even knowing him that well, where it was so beautiful to sing that song with him, the harmonies and just a beautiful song, great lyrics, but being able to like do those harmonies and really lock in was such a thrill. Yeah. So that I was very honored to be asked, like hugely flattered.
I especially love your vocals on the song, The Garden Rules.
Yes.
Really enjoy that song.
Yeah. You know, it's been almost 10 years. It's been 10 years since that happened. Yeah. It's been over a decade, I guess now. So I'm probably due to revisit that because it's been some time since I've listened. So I'll need to go back today and re-listen.
Well, earlier this year, you played a sold-out show in London, and this month you returned to the UK for more shows. You've been back and forth over the pond for years playing shows.
What do you enjoy most about playing in the UK?
Well, you know, I was signed to Columbia in London, you know, a subsidiary of Sony, in like 2007. So really my career started in the UK. And so with my first album, Catching a Tiger, I mean, I felt like I was practically living over in London and the UK, but you know, I was in London all the time. I was doing tons of festivals and TV and promo, and, you know, things were going great for me there, you know, before I really had anything going on in the US. And what I've loved is I feel like, you know, even 12 years later, I have such a great, like, loyal core of listeners that I feel so just comfortable with, and that they've like really kind of seen me through this last decade. So I love the folks that listen and come to the shows. But, you know, I mean, the UK and then Manchester sort of became my base after a while, because that's where my band was living and where I would rehearse when I played overseas. And I mean, I really, when I first started coming to the UK, everything weirded me out. Like, left side of the road, like everything's different, like the food's different, like people have accents, like, and it quickly became like the most familiar place to me, like a second home. Like, I have great friends there. I was just over for a wedding in May in London. And so I feel very at home in the UK, and I've had a lot of success there. So, and I always sort of joke that like my favorite thing about playing in the UK is Sunday roast. So, you know, you have a day off on a Sunday, you kind of sleep in, you know, get a newspaper, you go have like a roast beef kind of roast, and you just eat a ton of food, maybe have like a Guinness, sit by a fire if it's winter, and then you just like take a nap. And I love Sunday roast. So
yeah, you can't beat Sunday roast and a Guinness. That's my favorite tipple.
Yeah, I love it. I don't ever drink Guinness unless I'm having a Sunday roast.
Well, I actually had a few too many. I'm quite hungover today from drinking a few Guinness last night. I was at a gig last night.
Who'd you see?
Wolf Alice.
Yeah, Wolf Alice. Very cool.
Yeah, so I'm a bit tender.
Nice.
Today.
Well, yeah, I've been there. I mean, not that this is going to be a conversation about drinking, but I mean, I'll drink again, but I will say that once you get through the first couple days of not drinking, it's like, I'm amazed at how well I sleep. Like, I've never slept so good or woken up so early in the morning feeling like I could take on the world. It's been a really nice little break, and I'm going to try to get through my next tour without it. But, you know, eventually I'll get back to it. But there's something to be said about not being hungover. So I'm sorry that you're hungover.
It's fine. It's fine. I'll maybe have another Guinness in an hour, and it'll, you know.
Yeah. Hair of the dog, we call that. Yeah.
Yeah, that will sort me out. Just a few more questions. I like to ask my guests the following questions. For us music fans, music is a soundtrack to our memories. What song or album, when you listen to it, brings back the best memories for you?
Oof, that's a big question. I mean, I was like, how old was I? I was maybe like 11 or 12. I mean, I could give you like 20 answers, but just off the top of my head. Tuesday Night Music Club by Sheryl Crow. I feel like, you know, for one, just Sheryl Crow was so cool because she was like natural, and she played instruments, and she wrote songs, and she had such an incredible voice, and her lyrics were great. I mean, like, that album was killer. But also, like, I remember I went to summer camp for like 8 weeks right before junior high school. And I had a Discman, you know, like little CD player with my headphones, just listening to Tuesday Night Music Club over and over and over and over. And it was kind of around the time I was like turning from like kid into like a woman, you know. It was like a transitional time in my life of like, I was feeling things I had never felt before. And I really felt like Tuesday Night Music Club was just, I can picture myself, like, I went to summer camp in like the northern part of Michigan where there's like woods and lakes and it's beautiful. Just like walking through like the forests, like listening to Sheryl Crow, Tuesday Night Music Club, and also feeling like, I want to do this. I want to sing this. I want to play the guitar. I want to, you know, how much music was making me feel at that point in my life, you know?
Yeah, it's a great album.
Mm-hmm. So good.
Out of all the music in your collection, which artist or band do you have the most albums by?
Oh, I feel like I should pull out my phone to tell you. I've been shit at like, I don't really listen to very much music anymore, because when it became like so like every possible thing you could ever listen to is at the tips of your finger. I just got like option paralysis and started just putting on like classical music in the kitchen. I mean, Sheryl Crow could be a close contender for like the most albums over the years that I have bought by one artist. But, you know, I'm just trying to think like who else would it be? Cause how I listened to music before I became like a professional musician was a much different experience from where I'm at now with music. I mean, it might be Sheryl Crow.
Have you seen her documentary? She has a documentary coming out.
I haven't. No, I haven't, because I haven't really been paying as much attention to what she's been doing for like the last 5 or 6 years, but she's amazing. She's got like a farm and horses and stuff. I should check out her documentary.
This last one, which song or album is your guilty pleasure?
Ooh. Well, you know, I don't really believe in guilty pleasures, but I understand what you're getting at. I mean, I think a big jam for me was always Toxic by Britney Spears. That's a killer song.
Well, Leslie, that's my questions finished. Hopefully sometime you'll come to Ireland on the next leg of your tour, or are you? I couldn't see any on the list.
You know, I'm going to like look at my phone really quick and tell you this because I am announcing a UK tour. That being said, I'm like, just real quick. Now I can't find it. I am announcing a UK tour and I don't know if I am going to be making it to Ireland. Oh, shoot. Well, now I can't find them. I'm like, where am I going? If all the dates, I don't have all the dates in front of me. Anyhow, yeah, I don't know if I'm coming to Ireland. I think I'm just going to be around England. And I think there's one Scottish date, but no Ireland dates. I'm so sorry. But yeah, I've had great times in Belfast. I was there with Jack Severetti back in 2019, and that might have been the last time I was there. But I feel like we went to I don't know if it's called Sunflower Bar.
Yes.
Or something.
Yes.
Yeah, and we had it was beautiful. They had like lots of flowers and things, and it was just like really outside, like cool. And yeah, had a really nice time. Had a great dinner around the corner, and I would love to come back. I've had some times like, I feel like when I played there in 2016, I did a solo gig. And I ended up in some bar, which is sort of like the thing that Americans see in movies of like going into a little pub and ending up with everybody passing around a guitar, singing songs, you know, like getting the guitar passed to me, getting to sing along, getting to harmonize with just these strangers I just met. Like kind of like something you would think you'd see in a movie, like come into Belfast and actually having that really cool experience. So I would love to come back. Well, I will look forward to it. Thank you for, wanting to have me on. I've enjoyed talking to you.
Likewise, it's a pleasure. I've really been enjoying the album. It's absolutely fantastic. So I wish you all the best with that and the UK tour.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It's great talking to you, Mark, and I hope I see you over there soon. You have a good day.
You too.
Or a good night, I guess. Thanks.
Okay, bye-bye, Lissie.
Bye.